ULTI.TV.
Chris Palazzi pulling into the wind. That was a beautiful pull. That wind died down just at the right moment for the pull there. Chris Palazzi has brilliant pulls. Swings it to Duncan, swings it to Sammy Ogden. Looks like White Knight is also setting up his own. Again, smart move in this wind, seeing if Red Terror can break their way through that. The only disadvantage here for White. Oh, the puck goes up by Bruce Lee to Christian Pash in the end zone. Christian Pash and Chris Palazzi. Chris Palazzi claiming he got the D there. Great work. David Sanderson here with the disc. Looks like we've got a Red Terror here in a solid pommy cup. That wall looks really tight. The absence of Joel here for Red Terror could see to... Oh, D by Mark Vodka there. Like I was saying, the absence of Joel Pillar for Red Terror could see this team missing one of their major unit players. Let's see how this team performs tonight. So we've got Duncan Wells here with the disc. High release backhand over the top to Kay. Kay, Bruce busting into the end zone. The hammer goes up. Who's going to come down with it?
Oh, Jimmy!
Brilliant D there by Jimmy. Sando bringing it up nice and quick to the front of the end zone. Sammy on the mark, forcing him flick all of a sudden. Sando has a lethal flick. That could be a fatal mistake in this win. Bruce with a huge layout bid. Gets a hand to it. +3, he's going to be happy about that one. Sammy right on the end zone line with the disc here. Hard mark on, absolutely hard flick mark. Really well. Christian Pash with the pull. Pull goes up. That wind has died off a little bit. This could be really beneficial. The last game we saw between Dogfight and Bluebells. Drop by Chris Manning, that white disc, that wet disc, having a serious effect on the players here. Red Terror with the disc, pretty close to their attacking end zone, looking to capitalize on this turnover. There's been a lot of downwind points tonight, as seen in the last game. Was that a foul or a strip? That happened. Red Terror desperately trying to clear that space in the corner there. Richard Appleby with the disc right on the end zone line, puts it up, and the score for Mark Botka right on the edge of the end zone there. The first upwind point of the night. Pull goes up by Christian Pash. Downwind sailing right to the back of the end zone, and it lands out. Brick hold. Chris Palazzi bringing it up to the brick mark. Disc called in by Sammy Ogden. Red Terror sticking with their pommy cup here. Swings across the field to Jimmy. Jimmy back to Chris Palazzi. Sammy nearly getting a hand to that. Up the field to Chris Manning. Wing covered well by Christian Pash. Back to Palazzi in the middle of the field, who swings it, gaining ground to Jimmy. Those handlers are really going to have to work it. Back through the cup there a little bit. Chris Palazzi's gaining some serious ground on the wing there. Dumps it to Chris Manning. Chris Manning, hard mark on by Sammy. Palazzi can't keep his hands on it, drops it. Bruce with the disc, flicks it across the field to Richard Appleby. Richard Appleby looking long. White Knights here with the man defense. Forcing flick, forcing away, the flick goes up. Catch by Bruce in the end zone, completely unmarked. Beautiful cut. Score, Red Terror 3, White Knights 1. Sammy Ogden with the pull, into the wind. Sails high. Looks like it's going to stay in to be received. All Red Terror putting on that wall. Dan Clinton the point, staying really far across the field to cover that, cover the wing. Doesn't quite go far enough though. Looks like we've had a call on. Not sure what's going on. Both teams looking confused. Oh, plays continued. All teams just standing still. Flick goes across the field, gaining some serious ground. Good receive. Good catch. Flicks to Johnny right on the edge of the end zone. Red Terror scrambling for the D. Nick Dukovac in perfect position there. Nice and open. Great field awareness by Johnny Warren. Chris Palazzi with the pull. Goes up. Gonna roll a little bit, White Knight. That pull, not making it all the way to the end zone, allows White Knights to set up a solid defense. Looks like they're in a pommy cup again. White Knights going upwind. Bruce with the disc, looking for the huck, looking long. Red Terror going downwind. Long options available. Chris Palazzi, the deep. Is he going to get on this? Sando with the disc. Ogden forcing backhand. Sando flicks it straight across the field to Jimmy. Jimmy up to Johnny. White Knights hoping to capitalize on this run they've got in front of the Red Terror zone. Sando just slowing it down, allowing the Red Terror to get back on D. Again, Ogden forcing a hard backhand. Foul called. Uncontested foul. Disc in on 0. Sando. Back to, swings it across the field to Jimmy. Jimmy, Wall can't quite get in front of it. Sando looking long, he's looking for that backhand huck. His forehand is much stronger than his backhand, but that being said, in this sort of wind, Sando is the kind of player that can pull off any sort of throw. Looks like we've got the disc stalled on that sideline a bit. Jimmy with the disc, across to Steve. Steve looking upfield, Red Terror wings and points, getting in the good position to stop any upfield movement. Disc goes through the cup to the middle of the field. Cross to Steve again. White Knight really not looking to slow this down. The only really way they can capitalize on this if they keep it moving. Sando right on the edge of the end zone. Second upwind point of the night is it about to be? Dumps it, still right on that end zone line, flicks it straight through the middle to Chris Palazzi. Great score there by White Knights. Chris Palazzi with the pull, downwind, sailing to be received by Bruce Lee at the back of the end zone. Moving the disc quick, still not out of the end zone. White Knight getting down nice and fast to capitalize on such a brilliant pull. Sammy looking to move this disc, but that zone's really got him trapped. Just moves it up to Kay, who can get good hands to it. Looking around again, trapped on that sideline, having to dump it back inside the end zone. That's a really solid pommy cup. A little bit of heckling from the sideline here. Dan Clinton sends it up through the cup to Richard Appleby, to Mark Botka on that sideline. Doesn't keep the disc moving, chooses to dump it back to Dan Clinton. Dan Clinton up to Kay. Duncan, Bruce calling for it. That cup is rather tight. Oh, great pickup by Bruce there. Like I was saying, that cup is rather tight on the thrower. Wondering if a double team call is in order. That's definitely within 3 meters. To Dan Clinton. Bruce calling for the dump. That cup nice and tight. Disc back inside the end zone. Red Terror really not being able to move it. Disc right here by the mic. Bruce to Duncan. These throws are getting more and more forced. That White Knight zone is absolutely mesmerizing. It's brilliant. Again, heckling from the sideline, causing Red Terror second thoughts about some of their throws. Bruce throws it away. Dan Clinton can't quite get a hand to it. Sando with the disc, flicks it to the middle, flicks it to Chris Palazzi. Dan Clinton and Sando having a little bit of a tiff and fumble over each other. Johnny with the disc, same as last time. Great field awareness to Sando for the score. Chris Palazzi with the disc and the pull goes up. One thing I am noticing tonight is neither team has chosen the huck option. Both teams playing very conservatively tonight. There hasn't been a lot of hucks. Both teams have really strong and deep defensive players. Chris Palazzi, as we can see, playing now in the deep position, and Christian Plash for Red Terror when they're on defense. Both teams are really reluctant to put huck up despite the very easy downwind options. Chris Palazzi playing deep here. Bruce with the disc, very open. There's also been a lot of throws through the middle, to the middle of the field, despite having such a strong cut from both teams. both teams, if they want to score through the cup, they really have to capitalise on that run and keep it moving before the cup can catch up. As we're seeing now, Duncan with the disc, puts the flick up, Chris Palazzi gets a hand to it. Brilliant block by Chris Palazzi. What? Yeah, you want help? Sando with the disc, flicks it to James Hurley, flicks it to Johnny with the disc, dumps it back inside the end zone. Chris Palazzi being marked by Mark Botka. Oh, bad hands there. Sammy on disc, right outside the end zone here. Sammy, the unit player, looking for someone to make a strong cut. K does, but marked well by Sando. Duncan gets a hand to it, marked by Chris Palazzi. Can't quite keep his hands on it. Rather quick, looking for Hunt. Hunt goes up, the flick to Johnny. Warren White, captain of White Knights with the disc. Looking downfield, but no one's quite there yet. No one's caught up to him. Steve Harfield on the line. Red Terror getting that man defense on. Sammy putting on a strong mark. Chris Palazzi right on the edge of the end zone. Great flick up the line. The hammer across the field goes up to Johnny. Comes down with it. Great work by White Knights. Up window point. Fantastic work by White Knights there. Chris Palazzi with the pull. Special guest shout out from Ryan Dutch, wanting to mention the fact that there is no wind anymore, although it does come and go a little bit. Red Terror here with the disc. White Knight sticking with their zone play. Looks like we've got 4 handlers back. Bruce, oh, bad flick to Richie. Sammy Ogden calling the backhand force. Nice, easy score by White Knight there. Chris Palazzi with the pull after a solid timeout there called by Red Terror. Red Terror have just been scored on at least 3 in a row here, looking to get that back. Sammy Ogden misreads the disc and it goes down. If he got a hand to that, that's going to be a disappointing drop. Hard mark, looking to make up for it. Johnny with the disc. Right on the line here. Swings it across the field, looking to get the disc off the line and goes right back there for the score. Chris Palazzi pulling the disc again. Looking to roll. Oh, a little bit of confusion there by the Red Terror's handlers. Richie with the disc right at the back of the end zone, bringing it up to Sammy. Strong zone coming on right inside their end zone here. Swings across to Bruce. Bruce up to Duncan, still inside the end zone. Crash calls by White Knights here. Oh, great D there by Johnny. Going to pick the disc up, but doesn't quite get a hand to it, deciding to play it chilly instead. Great push pass into the end zone, score by Jimmy. White Knight running away with it here. Chris Palazzi with the pull after half. Goes down rather low. White putting that defense on straight away. Red Terror here, missing their captain Morgan Llewellyn and the absence of Joel Pillar. He's out for the rest of the season. Perhaps that's having an effect on the players tonight. Sean Davis here, youngest player in SA. Oh, hammer goes up. Oh, Sammy Ogden with a huge hammer. Can't quite keep hands on it though. Sando with the disc. Turnover, going upwind. That wind's picked up again to Johnny, to Jimmy. Jimmy looking through the middle of the cup. Oh, is White going to run away with it here? I'm not sure. Back to Sando in the middle of the field, across to Palazzi. All teams still looking on their toes. Don't want to give it away just yet. Throw goes through the cup to Johnny. White slowly moving it up the field very cautiously. It's what you expect to see from such an experienced team. Great hands there by Harfield. Harfield to Palazzi, to Johnny Warren White in the end zone for the score. Johnny Warren White with the pull, keeping it low, lands just outside the end zone. Dan Clinton. Sammy Ogden picking up the disc instead. To Dan. Dan flicks it absolutely horribly. Turnover to Harfield. Jimmy with the disc here in the middle of the field. Sando with the disc. Flicks it to Nick Dukovac. Looking, hard mark on by Ogden. Great open cut there Flick goes up by Sando. Johnny keeping hands to it. Just cutting off Harfield there, who might have had the better catch, but, you know, a score is a score. Chris Palazzi. Pull goes up. Okay, introducing now guest speaker Sean Davis, youngest player in Savage SA Ultimate Super League this year. Sean, what's your opinion of the game so far?
Well, so far it's been quite an interesting game. Red Terror have been making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes for such a decent team. Maybe it's something to do with the absence of Morgan and Joel. It definitely looks like it.
Great call there, Sean. Red Terror with a huge huck downfield. White just now being able to catch up to it. Red, unfortunately, not being able to capitalise on having such an open end zone. Dan Clinton with a put to Mark Bodka. Great eyes there by Dan. Christian Pash with the pull. Goes up. That wind's picked up, staying nice and steady now. So we've got White Knights here going downfield. Nick Dukovac busting long. Sando sends a scooper over the top to Johnny. Turnover straight away. Sammy now with a disc in the middle of the field. Red Terror going into the wind. They've got plenty of... they're already most of the way down the field. Hopefully they can work this. Bruce puts the brilliant flick out in front of Christian, who's now got the disc right on the line here, on the corner of the end zone. Swings it back to Bruce. Bruce making up for some of his perhaps early mistakes, puts the perfect flick out to Mark Bodka for the score. Okay, with the pull here. Goes up, sailing. Is it going to go out the back of the end zone? It quite possibly could. Downwind, lands out. Brick called by Johnny Warren White. Chris Manning with the disc in the middle of the field. Swings to Johnny Warren White. Back to Chris Manning. Great dishy there. Brilliant field awareness and flick to Harfield. Sends it across the field to Chris Palazzi, who reads the disc rather well. Backhands it to Sando on the far left side of the field. Flicks it back to Palazzi. Across in front of Sammy to Johnny. Johnny looking through the zone but can't quite find anything. Flicks it to Manning. Manning to Harfield. That zone staying really tight. Perhaps getting a little too close. Throw it right through the middle of the cup there to Sando. To Jimmy. White once again slowly working it up. Great bid there by Bruce. And Palazzi with a perfect open backhand to James Hurley in the end zone there. Dan Clanton receives the pull inside the end zone to Dan, to Bruce. Bruce to Ogden. Red Terror here moving the disc rather fast, hoping to get it moving before the White Knight zone set up, which they kind of have now. Oh, Point not quite moving across fast enough, and Richie getting the disc back to Ogden. Ogden looking for the flick up the line long, but that flick into the wind could be rather difficult now. That wind has picked up again. Red Terror heading straight into the wind. Backhands it to Bruce. That upwind makes White Knights lead here all the more crucial. Score is 5-11. Richie, great speed there. Unexpected when you look from looking at Richie, but he really has great closing speed. Just being able to get on all those discs that perhaps would be out of some other player's reach. Sammy Ogden with the disc to Bruce. That point on the right side of that cup really has got to get across and cover that. That's the second time the disc has got away up that side of the field. Dan Clanton holding onto the disc perhaps a little bit too long there in the axis position. Christian Pash now with the disc in the middle of the field. No deeps. As pointed out by Sean Davis, there has been no deeps played by Red Terror here. Being very conservative, working it up the field. In this wind, going upwind, it could be the smart choice. Disc right on the edge of the end zone now. Duncan with the disc. Great run through D there by James Hurley. James Hurley busting long. Sando looking to put up. Bruce bids across. Forehand flick goes up by Sando. Disc is coming right to the end zone line. Nick, layup in. So close. Either he got a finger to that or he was about 1 inch away. That was an absolutely huge bid, and an even huger huck by Sando. Dan puts the huck up to Mark Bodka, intercepted by Chris Palazzi. Tension here between Red Terror. Foul and a contest. Interesting. Dan flicks it. Richie just being able to pick it up. Great work. Backhands it to Christian Pash in the middle of the field. Looks Bruce, but looks him off. The flick goes high, and Johnny coming over the top with the D. Duncan can't get a hand to it. Sando flicks it to Johnny in the end zone. Johnny gets a hand to it right on the back of the end zone. Can't keep it in his hands. There's been a lot of turnovers at this point. Finally, this game's getting some real energy behind it. Bruce with the disc. Crash calls from the white sideline here. Sammy, Ogden with the disc. Swing to Duncan. Dishes it to Sammy. Dan Clinton calling for the dump. Sammy dumps it to Duncan. Dunks in the axis position. Looks like Red Terror's trapped on the sideline a little bit here. Ogden looking for the throw through the cup. It would have been available had the middle been in a good position there. Duncan to Sammy. Red Terror really struggling to move the disc off this line. Getting intense. Bruce working really hard. Come on, Bruce, keep working. Bruce working really hard here, trying to make room for their team. Desperately trying to get this team off the end zone line. Calling to Sammy, who's making space up the field. Looks up the wing. No one in position there. Red Terror has to keep moving. Bruce now back in position of handler. Looks like we've got Dan Clinton, either as the fourth or up, sort of popping. Swings it to Duncan. Duncan to Sammy, making up ground. Handlers slowly, very slowly working it up the field. Looks like that energy that started out this point with Red Terror slowly died down. Doesn't look like they quite have the legs. The flick goes up by Richie, coming back in. Deed by Sando from outside the field. Flicks it to Palazzi. White Knights now with the disc. To Jimmy. Okay, putting up sort of a straight up force here, not looking for those hucks. Yeah, that's definitely a straight up force, but the huck goes up anyway to Nick. Is he gonna get on again? Lays out. Oh, that's his second huge layout in the end zone. So close. Once again, Duncan with the disc to Dan. Red Terror in the same position they were 5 minutes ago. This point's been very long. Bruce to Sammy. Sammy to Kay. Almost the run through D there. Kay still with the disc. Backhands it to Dan. Up the field to Duncan. White Knight zone still running hard, despite the fact that they've been playing D for a long time. Bruce to Sammy. That point's got to get across. Sammy to Richie. Richie back to Sammy. Uncharacteristic drop there by Sammy right on the edge of the end zone. Finally, that white zone defense is forced to turn. Sammy covering Johnny, timeout call. Has a solid clean stack. Look like we've got a Johnny ISO right on the edge of the end zone here. Sammy Ogden forcing home. Backhand Johnny. Johnny managing to get away from Richie there for the score. Great work there. Chris Palazzi again with the pull into the wind. Still a brilliant pull. Lands short of the end zone. Red Terror making use of this, getting on it nice and quick, not giving White a chance to set up their zone. Sammy flicks it to Dan Clinton. Dan Clinton looks the huck, and the huck goes up. Chris Palazzi and Mark Bodka in the end zone. Mark Bodka comes down with it. Christian Pash with the pull. Red Terror goes up, sails nice and flat. Picked up by Chris Manning. Chris Manning to Chris Palazzi. Flicks it through the middle to Johnny, to James. With the disc. Little dishy to Chris Palazzi there. Johnny busting long. Disc goes out in front. Does look like he can get in position to get his hands on it. Seeing the Pommy Cup again as Sammy scoobers it over the top to Bruce. Almost did there by Brian. Bruce with a huge ham scuba to can't quite keep his hands on it. Chris Palazzi with the disc in the middle of the field to Steve. Jimmy making a kind of slow cut into the middle there, but manages to pick up the next one. Flicks it for the assist to Johnny. Can't keep his hands on it. Chris Manning. Bruce pointing long, looking for the hammer across to Sammy. Double helix at the end there. Sammy still getting under it. Sammy to Richard Appleby. That zone staying nice and tight. Jimmy almost with the hand block there. Bruce through the middle to Christian Pash. Oh, puts it way out in front of Mark Bodka, who gets on it anyway. Dumps it to Bruce across the field to Mike Middleton, who catches the disc in the end zone for the score. Christian Pash with the pull, goes up, floating to be received by Chris Palazzi to Johnny. Red getting down here. Looks like we've got two deeps. Sando with the disc. Wind's died off a bit. Perhaps that deep option is now an option for White Knights. Chris Palazzi putting it out in front of Chris Manning, gaining ground here. Palazzi to Johnny. Johnny drops it. He was looking upfield before he fully had it in his hands there. Home force. Sort of a messy stack by Red Terror. High hut goes up to Christian, who brings it down. Great hands. Score now, 8-12. Timeout called by Red Terror. Christian Pash with the pull here. All teams being very careful not to offside anymore. Nice floaty backhand, caught by Chris Manning. Flicks it to Brian. Doesn't get hands on it. Score 8-12. They're really going to have to push in order to get this game in the bag before time cap. Flicks it to Kay. Backhands it to Kay in the middle of the field. Across to Richard Appleby. Flick goes up across the field. Mike Middleton. Big mark by Johnny. Flicks it, goes high over the top. Sammy. Deed by Sando. Foul called by Sammy Ogden. Heckling from the sidelines. Call retracted. Sammy retracted his foul call. Sando with the disc again. Good spirit there by Sammy Ogden. Sando, forehand flick, goes up. Nick Dukovac and Mark Botka running deep. Dukovic finally getting that run into the end zone and the catch, what he's been looking for all night. Chris Palazzi with the pull. Goes up, looking to be received by Dan Clinton here. Catches the pull, backhands it to Bruce. To Dan. Dan holding the disc in the axis position, flicks to Bruce and running on to get the dishy, but can't get free of his player. Getting muddled up in the zone there. Sammy to Richard Appleby, to Dan Clinton on the wing now. That zone coming back across to Bruce. Flicks it through the cup to Christian Pash. The huge hammer goes up to Mike Middleton in the end zone with a catch. Chris Palazzi, deep player there, just out positioned by Mike Middleton. Pull goes up by Christian Pash. Pull picked up here by Chris Manning. Flicks it, backhands it to the middle of the field. David Sanderson looking long for the flick, but no one's cutting there. Palazzi now with the disc. Manning busting deep. Coming back under, not getting free. Steve tries to catch a disc one-handed, drops it. Bruce now with the disc. Puts the backhand up, but it's floating because of the wind. Coming down in a pack of people. Mike comes down with the disc and immediately throws it away into the ground. Conservation of greatness required there. Johnny now with the disc, flicks it to Sando. Sando being marked, being forced flick, so that long option is hugely available. Bruce with the bid there, but Jimmy still getting hands on it. Going for the full block as well. Great energy by Bruce, and Sando with the layout bid. Conservation of greatness again. Kay throws it straight into the ground. Hand block, Sando to Palazzi, foul called. Disc coming in on 0. Very close to the time cap. Getting to the pointy end of the game here. White Knights looking for that huck, but Red Terror marking pretty deep. Looks like we've had another call. Contested, just coming in on 1. Flick to Johnny. Again, looking long, but no one's quite there. Sando with a disc in the middle of the field. Manning busting deep. Marked well by Duncan Wells. One of the older players, but still got great legs. Manning now with a disc. Backhands it high to James Hurley, who takes the disc in the end zone. Pull goes up by Chris Palazzi. Time called in the break there, just before the pull. So add 1 to the score and play to that. If White Knight score this, however, that'll be a game because White Knight are currently on 14. Red Terror has some serious catching up to do if they hope to finish this game. Dan Clinton flicks it to Sammy Ogden. Flick goes up to Duncan, who's in a great position, nice and open. Mark Botka being marked by Chris Palazzi. Duncan being rather chilly. Red Terror looking confused, not giving him a lot of options. That zone's got rather strong on him now. Sammy with a disc. Looking at the end zone, Richard Appleby busting long. Sammy looks him off. Looking for the dump. Hard mark, dumps it back to Dan Clinton. Swing to Duncan. Duncan to Bruce up the line. Bruce puts it right up the line. Great bid there by Richard Appleby. Disc goes kind of out right by the mic here. Solid layout. Palazzi with a disc right on the corner of the end zone. No dump. Johnny making a dump cut. Catches the disc right in the end zone line. Hard mark by Sammy. To the middle of the field. Foul called.
3, 2, 1.
Uncontested foul there. Disc back in. On 0. Pilarzi flicks it up the line to Johnny. He gets one hand on it. Puts the huck up. Flick. Jimmy. Busting long. Botka. Dan Clanton under it. Huge stack of players. Who comes down with the disc? Kay. Red now with the disc. Bruce. Puts it out in front of Kay. Oh! So close to an injury there. Great D by Steve though. Brian to Chris. To Steve. To Nick. Backhands it to Chris. White really moving the disc around a lot here. Chris just slowed it down a little bit to Johnny in the middle of the field. Backhands it. We've had a call. To Steve. Hard mark on by Bruce there. Back to Pilarzi. Pilarzi looking, flicks it across the field. Sammy with a huge D. We've got it. Dan Clanton with the disc and White Knight putting on their strong zone again. Breeze has died down, just in time for a Red Terror to be going downwind. Bruce flicks it to Christian. K to Appleby. 3 red players down here and only 2 white. Hammer goes up to Mark Botka, positioned well in the end zone. Score now 8-14. Christian Pash with the pull in what looks like is going to be the final point of the game. White Knights going downwind here, and they need one more just to gill the win. Johnny, Warren White with the disc in the middle of the field, moving it quick to Nick. Nick dumps it back to Pilarzi. James Hurley busting deep, looked up by Chris. Chris swings it to Johnny. Johnny to Chris Manning, looking down the line at Jimmy there, but covered well by Christian Pash. Flicks it back across the field to Pilarzi. James Hurley cutting up the wing there. Bruce and K working his great wings here. Strip called, uncontested strip. Disc straight back in with Nick. Getting straight back to play, puts it up high, but Chris Pilarzi's able to get a hand on it over Dan Clanton. Dan Clanton on the mark. Hammer across the field. Helix is at the end. Deed by Mike Middleton in the middle of the field. Hard home mark, forcing flick. Sando on the mark. Flicks it to Richard Appleby. Looking to that corner, but that corner's getting rather crowded. Too many people cutting to it at once. Cut goes up, Mike Middleton for the score. Pull goes up by Christian Pash, looks to roll. Roll, stopped by Sando. All 3 handlers there looking to stop the roll together. Great teamwork, guys. Chris Pilarzi now with the disc, back to Sando. Sammy probably could have got a hand to that if he'd have tried real hard. Pilarzi now with the disc, Red Terror, looking to put on a foul call. Disc in on 0. Pilarzi with the disc. That wall is set up really far away from the disc. To Sando. Sando to Brian. Brian holding onto the disc a little bit too long. Great wall defense there. Brian not being able to get a through to the middle, and the poppers in the field. Crossfield hammer goes up by Sando. Perfect throw to Jimmy. To Steve. Puts it up to Brian. Great hands. Mike Middleton with a good cut into the end zone there. Sando now with the disc right on the end zone line. Dumps it to Pilarzi. A little bit of crowding. Blade. Dan Clinton now with the disc. Flicks to Ogden. Backhand to Richie. Looking long. Craw. The wings and the deeps crowding deep too much here. It's really stretching that field deep, but not actually creating much options for them. Bruce with the disc. Nice little dishy teamwork here between Bruce and Richie. Now Dan with the disc in the middle of the field. Kay calling for it. Disc goes up. Pilarzi coming in for the D. Goes over the top. Mark Botka for the score. Chris Pilarzi coming in to get the D over Christian Pash, but the disc goes over both their heads. And a great catch by Mark Botka with the backup. Disc going up by Christian Pash. Sitting rather high. Floating. Red not capitalizing, jogging down to the end zone. It is the end, getting towards the end of the game, so Red looking kind of knackered with only 1 sub. Dan Clanton off the field at the moment. Jimmy to Steve. This disc moving rather fast by White Knights here. They're not taking any of this. Oh, huge layup bid by Bruce. Finally, one of his bids paid off. Ogden with a huge hammer to Mike Middleton. So open. Chris Palazzi moving. Puts in a huge bid, but can't quite get a hand to it. Half a second too slow. Huck goes up by Richie to Mark Bodker in the end zone. Chris Palazzi again. Mark Bodker with the disc. Score now 13-14. Red Terror heading downwind here. White ran away with it early in the game, and Red Terror bringing it back, scoring 4 in a row, the last points. White Knights not messing around anymore. They've got their game faces on. So do Red Terror. They're looking to win this. They didn't think they were in with a chance 4 points ago, but now they do. And they are fighting hard. I've never seen more determined faces on players in SA Ultimate Super League before. Must have something to do with that huge camera that's on him. Steve with the disc to Johnny. Oh, fumbles it, but manages to keep his hands on it. That wind's picking up. Sort of a cross breeze, but White Knights still definitely going into the wind. Steve with the disc. White Knights are working it well so far. Let's hope they can keep their game faces right into the end zone. Jumped in by Johnny. No, landed 1 foot just touching that end zone line. Called straddle to Manning. Right on that end zone line. Flicks it to, backhands it to Harfield. The middle to Jimmy. Game won by White Knights. Final score 13-15. Such a well-spirited game. Very exciting towards the end there with both teams. One team running away with it, and then Red Terror really giving them a hard fight to the end. I've been your commentator, Declan Brady. This is the second round SA Savage Ultimate Super League. White Knights versus Red Terror. Final score 13-15. White Knights victor.